On this day in 1972, Danny McGrain made his comeback just 5 months after suffering a fractured skull in a match against Falkirk. 1972 was something of a high point for Jock Stein's Celtic. The trauma of Milan 1970 still loomed large, but they had missed out on a third European Cup final only on penalties against Inter Milan in April. They hadn't actually lost a match in that run, and had won yet another League and Scottish Cup double, sealed with a record-equalling 6-1 win over Hibernian in the Scottish Cup final. Jock Stein's painstaking succession planning seemed to be proceeding perfectly. George Connolly, Davy Hay, Lou Macari and Kenny Dalglish were now fixtures in the first team and looked set to carry the side right through the 70s. But one player had been missing for the past 5 months and returned against Aberdeen that day: Danny McGrain. McGrain had found his own road to the first team, blocked at different times by great players like Jim Craig, Tommy Gemmell, Jim Brogan and fellow Quality Street kid Davy Hay. By early 1972 he'd made the breakthrough, but then came that horrendous injury at Brockville on March the 25th, after he had been a standout in the European Cup quarter-final ties against Ujpest Dosa. McGrain was injured in an accidental collision with Doug Sumner after just 6 minutes, but after treatment off the pitch, came back on 4 minutes later and played the rest of the first half with a fractured skull. He would later recall it must have been a particularly cold day because the substitute that day, Lou Macari, spent the interval reassuring him he'd be fine for the second half. By then, the seriousness of the injury had been realised and McGrain was taken to Falkirk's Royal Infirmary for an X-ray before being admitted. So serious was the fracture, they considered moving him to Edinburgh, but he spent the night in Falkirk. Now, 5 months later, McGrain returned for a Dryborough Cup match against Aberdeen at Celtic Park. The Dryborough Cup was a short-lived pre-season knockout tournament sponsored by the now-defunct Dryborough & Co Brewers that ran from 1971 to 1974 and was revived in 1979 and 1980. It was open to the 4 top-scoring clubs in Division 1 and the 4 top-scoring sides from Division 2. Celtic appeared in every final except the last, but won it only once in 1974. From 1972 to 74, an experimental offside rule was operated in the Dryborough Cup, under which players could only be offside in the penalty box. This saw the introduction of new lines on the pitch, extending the lines of the 18-yard box to the touch lines on either side. On the 2nd of August 1972, Celtic lined up Williams, McGrain, Brogan, Murdoch, McNeil, Connolly, Johnston, Dalglish, Deans, Macari, Callaghan. McGrain played in the first half of a reserve match against Queen's Park the night before, after which Jock Stein told the Scotsman, "Danny has been cleared by the specialist and he is fully fit. We think it would be wrong to nurse him, and the sooner he gets back into the game the better. The match against Aberdeen will have much atmosphere and excitement, and it should be a good occasion for him. He will not have time to think back to his injury." Celtic hadn't beaten Aberdeen since 1969, and the game turned out to be as tough as expected. Jimmy Johnston had a magnificent match and opened the scoring on 15 minutes, curling a brilliant shot around Bobby Clark and in at his far post. Then a moment of alarm, as John Rafferty reported in The Scotsman on the 3rd of August 1972. There was a frightening moment when Taylor's hard shot struck McGrain on his head and he was felled. The hush clearly indicated the crowd remembered the Celtic player's skull fracture, and the referee promptly stopped the game. The back recovered quickly and was none the worse. Although obligatory now, referees would not routinely stop a match for a player being hit on the head by the ball at this time, so the referee, J.W. Patterson of Bothwell, was clearly mindful of McGrain's injury as well. Celtic continued to dominate but couldn't find that second goal, and Aberdeen equalised through second half substitute George Buchan, brother of Aberdeen's former captain Martin, now with Manchester United. Another Quality Street kid, Paul Wilson, replaced Dixie Dean shortly after, and then at an Aberdeen corner, the referee was injured in a collision with Aberdeen centre-half Willie Young and had to go off. One of the linesmen took over and an appeal was broadcast over the tannoy for a qualified official to run the line. A besuited gentleman from the main stand took over and almost immediately ruled out an Aberdeen goal. 10 seconds into extra time, after Aberdeen hit the post, the referee returned to the action and the Dons took the lead 5 minutes later through a second from Buchan. 3 minutes into the second period, Paul Wilson equalised, Rafferty writing in the Scotsman, "Wilson strode through like a thoroughbred and shot a spectacular goal." It seemed almost a shame, after such a high-quality game, when Celtic's winner came from a miss-hit shot from Tom Callaghan, which totally deceived Clark, who lost his balance and fell over, allowing the ball to trundle into the net. So Celtic reached the Dryborough Cup final for a second successive season, and this time they'd go down to a 5-3 defeat to the same Hibernian they'd thrashed 6-1 at the same venue 3 months before in the Scottish Cup final. All that really mattered, though, was that Danny McGrain, not for the last time in what would be a long and distinguished Celtic career, was back from serious injury and looking as good as ever.